Everyone, Happy New Year. It's 2026 in the US finally. We're one of the last ones, right, to see that happen. Actually, Hawaii, right, I think would be the last because they're the closest to where it starts. So, everyone who's watching, it's now January 1st, 2026 here in the US, most of it anyway, right? And with that said, we've had a pretty whopping 2025, and I'm sure many, many people are ready to see 2026 and what the better world can be. So, Cathy Bettis here, your wellness coach, if you let me. And I'm here, I'm a fellow female activist, and I come here weekly with wellness tips. And then every so often, like this, I'll have an extra. And that means that it's something to do with like current events, so to speak, and how you might want to take action. In this case, this extra was actually brought about because I felt so blessed. I felt so very, um, you know, grateful. Now, I come from a privileged background, so to speak. I mean, like, I'm actually, able to eat and sleep and have a roof over my head. I happen to be actually um, here at my sister's, and I was here as adult supervision for my sister's dog, as it was New Year's Eve, and we all know what happens if if you leave your furry friends alone during that time. So I took one for the team, and my sister and her family went out of town, and I was happy to stay here, but it turned out so well. And it got me thinking when I woke up this morning after being up all night almost with the poor dog. Actually, he did very well, but from 9 p.m. last night to 1 a.m., it was not fun, right? Like I kept getting up, and poor thing was shaking. Anyway, long story short, I am very, very grateful for today. I've had a very nice, slow moving start to the year. And this is the Gregorian calendar year, start of the year, okay? Quite literally, as the world, the start of the new season or new year for the earth is really the spring equinox, or in the case if you're on the, opposite end of the hemisphere, it would be the fall equinox. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that this is just the capitalistic start of a new year. So don't get that confused. But if you have a little mug of something nice and warm and wonderful, go ahead and sit down and listen. I have lemon ginger with probiotics, and I'm very happy about that. So what I wanted to bring today was, again, this is kind of like the blue sky. So what's funny is that the term blue sky was a long-term marketing term long time ago, made up about like if you had the best version of something, right? Now there's actually a platform called Blue Sky, so I have to make sure that I'm distinguishing the two. I am on Blue Sky, by the way, but I digress. So I wanted to come today on this extra and give you a taste of what I think can happen. In 2026, we're looking to stop fascism, or at least put a halt to it. And then the long, long road that it will take, hopefully not beyond my lifetime, but I can understand that, um, the arc of justice does not bend on its own, quite literally. And everything that I'm helping to stop and then resolve, I may not see that happen in my lifetime, but this is what I'm hoping will happen, starting now, right, as soon as we can, and then making this a better place for everyone here in the US and then beyond. But as we know, our US Constitution has been basically ignored and shredded since January 20, 2025. And this is my wish list. This is my blue sky ideal of what would happen if we were able to take over everything from the 2026 midterms on through 2028 and then beyond, right? I personally don't believe that anyone with any common sense should ever have ever voted, right, in 2016 for a rapist, but they did. And I'm not going to go into more about that. But what I'm saying is that if enough people are pissed off now, which there's quite a many, quite quite a few compared to previously, and that's to say that more. Well, again, I'm not going to go there. What I'm saying is that there was Not enough people pissed off in 2016 about what they saw. God knows why. I don't know why. But now in 2026, yeah, people are pissed off. Like they got pissed off quick in 2025. And those were people who even voted for all this horrible stuff. So my wish list is all about the constitutional amendments that get to be added so that they can bring about uh, real democracy, which this nation was built on lies and capitalistic scarring of every type, right? White supremacy. And it was never addressed in the right way. And this a list of hopeful amendments that could be added in the coming, hopefully, decade, if not sooner, would really make a difference. So here we go. So, amendments to the Constitution. The first one, 28th Amendment, which, by the way, should have been passed many years ago, more like a century and 5 years ago, but that is the Equal Rights Amendment. So the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA as it's known, technically started, I think it was like 1920 something. We'll look back 105 years. It's been that long. And why? Only because it would mean equal access, equal rights for females or, and everyone else who isn't a white cis male, right? But nonetheless, the 20th Amendment theoretically should be, by all intents and purposes, the ERA. It simply was not published. Theoretically, it could have passed. But no, that didn't happen. And so we are here. Had that ERA, by the way, passed many, many years ago, you would never have had what happened in, or I should say, Roe versus Wade would have never fallen. It would never have been able to been picked apart like it was. So the 28th Amendment, the ERA gets added. Now, in my head, I want this all to happen all at once. If we have a massive supermajority Democratic Congress, as well as the presidency, this could actually happen. Okay. Back in Governor Whitmer's second term in Michigan as governor, they in 5 minutes passed like a zillion amendments to their constitution and made their lives so much better. Okay. So yes, it can happen. Government does not have to take decades and centuries, but here we go. All right, so the 29th Amendment, this is what I think should be the 29th Amendment. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act should become an amendment. Why? Because then it's in the Constitution and it can't be torn up. That, quote unquote, or I should say in parentheses, that also includes overturning Citizens United and capping campaign contributions and time to campaign to only a few months each year. And all 50 states must adopt independent map drawing commissions. So I believe in the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I believe, I could be completely wrong, but I believe that last part is actually in the act, meaning all 50 states would adopt independent map drawing commissions. Now, I could be wrong, but I would want that to be included in the 29th Amendment. All the horrible things that happened in the last, I would say easily, right after the Civil Rights Act was passed, this sort of situation, this amendment should have been added, and it wasn't. And since then, ever since that very day that Civil Rights, Act had passed, it's been chipped away at. Well, something like this 29th Amendment, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which was just going to be a law, right? But because of two horrible, horrible people that will never be named again, didn't get rid of the filibuster, we don't have the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But I believe that that actual law should become actually an amendment, so that way it can never be overturned. Then the 30th Amendment, I believe, should be, and the reason why I put it in this order, it's specific. We need to make sure that we have equality. We need to make sure that people can vote. But the 20th Amendment was already technically ratified. That's why Again, it's the 28th Amendment already, but no one's recognizing it. And there's a lot of foo-foo about that. But anyway, so the 28th Amendment, okay, it just hasn't been published, all right? We can like legal litigate on it forever, but it just needs to be published. All right, so the 20th Amendment technically already exists. Then we have the 29th Amendment. People need to vote and have the ability to vote to make all this other stuff feasible, right? So voting, so important. Then you have the 30th Amendment, which would be universal health care with full reproductive health care coverage. And we all know what that means. So basically, all the states are screwed and cannot deny health care of any kind to anyone with a uterus, and to include full reproductive health care, which of course includes abortion care. So yes, that would take care of all the, I really want to curse right now, but I'm going to try to go through this without cursing too much. Then we have the 31st Amendment that would repeal and make illegal all such laws that resemble the Hyde or Comstock Acts. So first, the 31st Amendment, which the amendment, I don't know if amendments are allowed to have, again, let's say multiple functions, but again, the 29th Amendment, definitely I would hope that they could just take the law, which had a lot of different, awesome ideas behind it, and then add it into the amendment. The 30th Amendment, okay, was universal health care with full reproductive health care coverage. The 31st Amendment, right, would repeal first the Hyde and Comstock Acts and, if possible, make all such future possible laws illegal, meaning it cannot happen. Um, I really think that, if anything, just make the 31st Amendment, repeal those horrible, horrible laws. That way they never can come back again. But in any case, at least get rid of them and leave it at that. The 32nd Amendment should be repeal and make, I'm sorry, 32nd Amendment should be update to add more gun restrictions to level out the Second Amendment. Now, I did not say to get rid of the right to bear arms. Anyway, but the 32nd Amendment would update and add gun restrictions, common sense, which most gun owners really want. And it would basically make sure that all the horrible things that have happened in the name of the Second Amendment can no longer happen. The 33rd Amendment would be create term limits for SCOTUS and all of Congress. Also add same federal judicial ethics rules for federal judges and apply those to SCOTUS as well and expand the SCOTUS. Now, again, I don't know when it comes to amendments if you're allowed to encumber, right, and put a whole bunch of different such items into one amendment. But it it is without a doubt imperative that there are no more any type of life term appointments for anything. Um, what the last 60 years have shown us is pretty much that humans just, and you might say this about any of the civilizations that have existed, you can't trust humans. Um, and I would just say, well, you can't trust patriarchy and you can't trust white supremacy. I'm all for matriarchy and egalitarian type societies, but power corrupts absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so when you don't have a fair system to begin with, then everything falls apart. So the 33rd Amendment, again, would be to create term limits for at least SCOTUS, okay, the Supreme Court, and then also all of Congress. We already have, despite what MAGA might say, we have term limits for the executive branch of our federal government. That's not going to change. And so we definitely would think and keep in mind the idea behind not giving term limits to SCOTUS or to, well, I'm not going to go there. It doesn't matter. Term limits for anyone, no more lifetime appointments and no more continuous ways to stay basically a career politician. And I think it's imperative that the same, all judges from your local magistrates, right, all the way up, again, except the very top, which is SCOTUS, has to have ethic rules and they must abide by them. There is no way in, I won't say anything, but to not have rules with the highest court just is stupid, like truly stupid. So that needs to definitely be changed for sure. But yeah, I believe more than anything that, a lot of the harm that was allowed um, in in both 45's and 47's reign of terror is because of SCOTUS. Much of what took place was based on nine, well, I should say 6 of 9 people. Then we have the 34th Amendment, which would be take away pardon power from the president. And you may say, oh, well, don't do that just because you had one insane person. No, really. Because you had one person, I don't even call it a person, I call it an it. Because 45 and 47 did as they have with that pardon power, no, take it away. There is absolutely no reason that one person should have the availability and the ability of having these type of basically it's pay to play now. And in the eyes of why the founders created this type of, power, so to speak, was because they figured, oh, well, that seems pretty cool. Let's make that happen. No, knowing now what you absolutely know about, the type of person, I there is no reason to have that at all. And I would hope that anyone with any sense of decency could understand why there is no reason to have, again, the pardon power. 45 and 47 has proven that no one should have that type of power. And I was going to put a 35th Amendment, but I never got around to it. And I had an idea in mind, but apparently it wasn't enough that I got back to it. So why don't you let me know what you would think would be. Now, keep in mind, the Constitution, the US Constitution, was not built for anyone but white cis males. Okay. And with that said, it had such a interesting concept, right? A democratic republic, a representative democracy, right? And so, with that said, the idea was promising. It just never got realized. Okay. We have that chance. We can, in 200, in 250 years, there's only 27 amendments added to the Constitution. That's actually quite sad because that means that it takes too long, right, for that arc of justice to take hold. All of these amendments should have been added, a decade, a century ago, really, right? And so I would hope that you agree and that you will do everything you can to see it that only progressive candidates win primaries and then take everything and win in general elections in 2026. Because that's the only way that something like this could ever happen, that we can have what we so deserve and give equality to everyone and give a fair shot to everyone. It's dependent on everyone taking up the fight. And however that looks to you, then let it be just one little task per week or one little task per day, but take up the fight. For now, take care, take charge, and we'll see you in 2026.